but it doesn't happen very often. Now, what is the solution for this? If you look at the Medical Council of India, the competency-based undergraduate curriculum that just came up in 2019, they also give a solution for this. They say a blueprint may be needed to decide which competencies should be assessed during internal assessment and which should go for summative or university examination. So this is the solution, and this is not something new. This has been there for a long period of time. It has been told in the previous gadget, where in 1997 they also talked about blueprinting a systematic pattern of framing questions and making a table of specification. Now, if you look at the assessment opportunities that we have in our medical schools, broadly it is divided into three categories. The first one being the summative assessment. It is usually the university examination that happens at the end of the term or professional profession. Then we make a pass or fail decision because of this assessment in summative assessment. The second one is formative assessment, where it is done during the process of instruction, and the primary purpose of formative assessment is to offer feedback for improving learning. And there is something called internal assessment that we have taken a middle path, and sometimes it is added to the final summative assessment marks, but sometimes it is kept separate. Various institutions follow different guidelines. So these are the three broad ways or opportunities we have for assessment of students. Now, where blueprint fits in all this scheme of things. Now, if you look at what is a blueprint, the first thing is the definition as per the Oxford Dictionary is, it is a plan for a building or a machine with white lines on a blue background. Let me show you a picture. This is how the blueprint actually looks, and it came from architecture. So, if you look at this diagram clearly, if you say there is a blue background, and let me use the pointer. Yeah. So you have some white lines in a blue background. So basically, looking at the blueprint, what we can do is we can find out, this is a blueprint of a house where we can say where is the kitchen, where is the, how many rooms will be there in the first floor, what will be the size of the window or doors, where it will be located. So it gives you a plan or a plan of action for the future construction. Similarly, in medical education, if you look at what is a blueprint, it's nothing but a table of specification. What does that mean? It's a table. It's just a table. It can be a 2x2 table, 3x2 table, 3x6 table. So this is a table, and the table contains three things. It's content. It's a grid of content, domains, and tools of assessment, and it indicates the marks carried by each question. So this is what we are going to talk about and see how can we develop a blueprint in medical and in our specialty. Now, is it a very new concept, or it has been there in school for long? See, if you look at the CBSE curriculum, if you Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan, if you see, there is a lot of blueprints available from class 6th onwards. If you this table is actually the blueprint for the science subject in class 8, where in one side we have the contents or the lessons, and in the top you can see there are marks. It indicates the marks. DSA is very short answer, essay is short answer, essay 1 and essay 2 with different marking pattern, and long answer question, and it talks about total marks. Now this very short answer questions, if you see, it adds up to 20, and like that it comes. So this table actually indicates or tells that relative importance of each of these topics, how many marks should be there and how it is distributed. So, and they also talk about something called difficulty level, which is otherwise known as higher order thinking skills or HOTS. It is also being given in the school curriculum level. See, easy questions, what percentage of weightage should be there, average questions, what is the percentage, around 60%. And for higher order thinking skills, we have something about 10%. So when the school curriculum follows this, why not in medical school we do this? Why we should not be doing this? It is a very important tool, and we'll see there are some challenges of doing it, but we'll see how we can overcome these challenges. So before we start any system of assessment or to start the blueprinting process, we need to consider certain points. The first point being, who am I assessing? Is it the undergraduate or postgraduate? Because in the undergraduate curriculum, if you look at the weightage that we give to various domains of learning will be little different than the postgraduate assessment. The second question that we should ask is, why am I assessing? Is it for formative, whether my intention is to give feedback, or I'm going to make a pass or fail decision? The final thing is, how do I assess? Because as per the Miller's competency pyramid, if you look at, there are different levels of clinical competency that a person achieves. That goes from knows how, shows how, and does. So in this, the scope of today's webinar we'll be talking about undergraduate curriculum and undergraduate students. We'll be talking about summative assessment, and we'll look at all these things. The only difference is that we don't usually does level assessment is not followed for MBBS students, because the clinical cases and everything, they are always done under certain supervision. So this is the difference that we're going to, and this is our scope: undergraduate students, summative assessment, and to develop a blueprint in that. So how does a blueprint help? So you've been talking about what is a blueprint. I have told that it's a table of specification of three things. It talks about the contents, the methods, tools of assessment, and the weightage for each competency. Now, because if the blueprint is available, it will make the assessment process transparent and clear. It serves as a template for learners, the question paper setter, and the examiner. The disconnect that we discussed earlier can be minimized. I'm not telling that we can completely avoid it, but we can minimize it. It's like a bias. Bias cannot be completely avoided, but it can be minimized. The second thing is, it specifies the weightage for various domains. What is important and what is expected out of them is given more importance rather than what is the fancy items or fancy syndromes that we talk about. This third thing is setting questions as per the norms and guidelines. If we have done this blueprint, then the question paper setter, who is a person who is usually outside the university or from different medical colleges, they will have an idea about how do we set questions, from where to put questions, short answers from or long answer from. The fourth point is, it reduces validity threat. Now, validity is a very important concept in assessment, because validity indicates what it purpose to measure. That means if we are looking at cognitive assessment, we should be always doing a written test. But if you are looking at skill assessment, written test will not help. That means written test for skill assessment or procedural skills assessment is not a valid instrument. So now, how do you reduce this validity threats? There are two threats of validity that happens usually in medical assessment process. There are many, but these two are very important. These two, one is the construct underrepresentation, and second is construct irrelevant variance, CU and CIV. Now, what does this mean? CU is, we are asking too few items. That means our sample is very less. So in that case, a few items are being asked, so that we don't know, we are not covering the whole area. In this case, we are actually committing the error of construct underrepresentation. And then blueprint, if we develop it properly, it tries to address this issue. The second thing is construct irrelevant variance. In this case, I'll highlight one point about biased items. What happens, medical teachers, we think when we put questions, it should be always something new, something great, something very, very recent. That is good to ask, but the important thing what we should do is we must have given that opportunity for the students to learn about that particular thing. Now we go to a conference, we learn new things, we come back and ask in our questions. That is not fair. Why? Because what we should do is, if we have gone to a conference, you come back and take a class for them and educate them about the recent advances, then you can ask. We are not testing ourselves. We are testing what is expected of the students at the end of the MBBS curriculum, and how he can practice as per the prescribed competencies or guidelines by a body like MCA. Now, the fifth point about how the blueprint helps is actually helps to bring constructive alignment of educational spiral. As earlier it was told, the assessment is the tail that works the curriculum dog. So if we make our assessment process appropriate and proper, then everything falls into place, like the teaching learning methods and the educational objectives. So that is what educational spiral is all about. Educational spiral includes three things: the objectives, the second is teaching learning methods, and the assessment process. Now, having understood the need of a blueprint and what is a blueprint, now let's go to the topic, the second section of how to develop a blueprint. And now in this section, first I'll take you through an example that is given in a book or a literature available in the literature. Then we'll see how we have done blueprint in Department of Preventive and Social Medicine using a simple software Excel. That is how it is to be developed. Now, there are steps of developing a blueprint, usually 4. In sometimes it is said 5. I'll tell you about that. The first one is define the purpose and scope of assessment. The second is assigning weights to various components like contents, domain of learning, and methods of assessment. The third one is decide total weightage and number of items to be included in assessment. And the fourth one is we develop a table of specification. Sometimes literature also says that question paper setting is also a component of a blueprint, but I'll limit myself to these 4 steps. Question paper setting is altogether a different ball game. We should have a separate session for that. So let's come to the first one, define the purpose and scope of assessment. You remember the 4 questions that I asked you in the beginning, 3 questions. In fact, the first one is whether we are doing it for undergraduate or postgraduate training, whether the assessment is targeted towards providing feedback, or we are trying to look at the pass or fail decision, which is assessment of learning. The models of competency, as Miller has given it about the 4 layers of clinical competency that we go. This is what it is. It says knows how, shows how, and does. And for each of these subcomponents, what we can do is there are tests available or tools available. Like for knows and knows how, easily is the cognitive domain, where we can limit ourselves to written method of assessment like MCQ, short answer, long answer, and oral also has got an attitude component to it. We'll talk about that a little later. Shows how basically is the OSCE or the practical examinations that is being conducted. Does, for MBBS teaching, usually we don't go there because it has got performance assessment in real life. So we limit ourselves to shows how level. So after having identified the scope of the examination, one important thing about your university guidelines, how many usually given by the university. So though as a medical educator, we have some role in that, but later on, we will try to develop a blueprint as per the guideline prescribed in the university or in the by the dean's office. So the first point is define purpose and scope of assessment. The second one is, please read this statement, and this statement is quite self-explanatory when it says all that is expected cannot be taught and all that is taught cannot be assessed. So if we agree to this statement, what we should do is, how do we then ascertain relative importance of a topic? How do you give which topic is more important for a learner to learn? So now in this case, the first thing what we do is we rely on our friend, and this chapter should be taught at length. The second part is the experts or stakeholders' judgment. It is always good to go out from your own judgment to include a collective judgment thing. That means you have to involve 4 or 5 people or experts in the group. Also involve some other stakeholders from who are, for MBBS, it is usually good to involve the primary medical officers in the PHCs who are working there, because they are the end user. Ultimately, they have to go there and work in certain time unless they do the super specialization. The third thing is there are certain, if we look at the market, where they are going and what type of jobs they're doing, and healthcare utilization survey, the burden of disease will also tell us that which subject or importance that we should be relying on. For example, if you look at the example of healthcare utilization, if you look at the global burden of disease studies, it tells the top 10 killers of in India or in various states. So what will happen is, so if we do that way, So the healthcare utilization survey will give an indication that we should be focusing more on those topics where the burden is more, or the mortality, burden is usually defined in two terms, the morbidity and mortality. There we should pay our attention to at the MBBS level. So this is how we give relative importance of a topic. Is there any other way of assigning weights to this particular to the subject that we are teaching in our specialty? What we should do is, there are the topics, weights can be given in various ways, but the two common thing that people do is classify them as per impact and frequency of the condition. Now, how impact is subdivided: if it is not urgent, little prevention potential, it is given a weight of 1 out of a scale of 1 to 3, serious but not life-threatening 2, and life-threatening emergencies are given a weight of 3. Now, this the importance and the impact is defined in one way, but there is also it is also imperative to consider that the frequency of the occurrence of the condition should also be kept in mind. If the condition is rarely seen, it is given a scale a score of 1. Relatively common, it is given a scale of 2, and very common, it is 3. So this is how it is. We give scales, and then we multiply it to get the weightage. So weightage is a multiplication of impact into frequency. So that this is not the only way to give weightage for clinical or the other subjects. There can be other ways of doing it, that like suppose opportunity to learn in another subject. Suppose the course should be given some more importance in your specialty. You can also have impact, frequency, and opportunity to learn. So this is the multiplication. The principles of probability comes here, and you try to give weightage for each of these subjects. Now, how do you assign weightage for basic sciences? So that what I discussed little earlier was for the clinical subjects. Now for basic sciences, what do? You give importance like this, like the weights are classified as 1, 2, 3 with little clinical application, moderate clinical application, and high clinical application. So you give 1, 2, 3 and try to do classify your subjects as per the weight. Now let's come back to computation of weights. Now suppose I'm taking you through a hypothetical scenario. Suppose we are talking about 3 topics in a specialty: renal, respiratory, and cardiovascular system, which is written in this side, and impact and frequency. So the impact and frequency scores are usually, as I discussed earlier, it can be by the experts or the stakeholder involvement. So for the renal course, they have given impact of 1 and frequency of 2. So impact of 1 means little prevention potential, frequency of 2 means moderately seen condition. So you have to multiply I into F to get the score for renal course. So it is 2 here. So for respiratory, it is given as 2 and 2. So let me go back to the previous slide where we see, again, revisit this particular slide. 2 means serious but not life-threatening, and 3 means life-threatening emergencies. So if you consider that particular classification, respiratory comes under 2 into 2, so it gives 4. So this was given by the experts and other stakeholders. Now cardiovascular system is also given the highest 3 into 3, which is coming to 9. So you add 2 plus 4 plus 9, it comes to 15. So the total weights for these 3 subjects are given as 15. Now, just hold on to that particular thought. We'll come back to that in subsequent slide. Now, the second part is, after having given weights to the subject or the content, the second part is domain. Remember, I told blueprinting is a grid of 3 things. 1 is content, second is domain, and third is the tools of assessment. So we are now coming to the domain of assessment. As we know, the domain of learning in medical education usually is 3. It is cognitive, then second is psychomotor, or the third one is affective domain. So how do we give weightage to these domains? So cognitive, psychomotor, affective, as per the Miller's pyramid, it comes under knows how, psychomotor is shows how, and affective also comes under shows how. So there are different tools available for assessing these things. Like in the cognitive, also if you look at the Bloom's taxonomy of classification, there are various domains are also told in that, starting from recall till creation. So the simpler way of classifying it is lower order thinking and higher order thinking. So lower order thinking includes recall and understanding, and higher order thinking starts from analysis onwards. So there are some different classification, different schools of thoughts, but we'll stick to that. Now, recall of or lower order thinking skills are usually assessed by MCQ, short answer questions, problem solving skills by short answer questions and long answer questions. MCQ can also be for problem solving skills depending upon the way we formulate it. The second one is psychomotor skill. In this, it is usually the practical or OSCE that can be done. Affective or communication, when we are assessing, it is OSCE. So these three domains now we have to give weights to them. So the third thing is the tools. The tools are it's linked to the domains. So the tools that or methods of assessment we are going to use in our final summative assessment is MCQ, SAQ, LAQs, and OSCE. So having understood the content, the domains of learning and the tools, now let's look at what are the challenges of assigning weights. So when I'm telling, now in this previous example, in cognitive, if we say that, okay, cognitive will be given some weightage, that you will get from your dean's office. What percentage? So suppose for an example of a 400 marks question examination pattern for a subject, what percentage should go to cognitive domain and what percentage should go to psychomotor and affective? So basically theory and practical. So that is defined by the university itself. And within that subject, the question papers, what percentage should come to MCQ, SAQs, LAQs are also defined in the university. So now, what are the challenges in assigning weights? Because it's an intensive process, it takes time, you have to talk to people, you have to get consensus. It should not be that it is only done by in single individual. There is some degree of subjectivity or element of subjectivity is there. We cannot be 100% objective. I feel that this particular chapter should be given weightage. The others may agree, may not agree. So, but anyway, we have to deal with it. We can minimize it by increasing our sample size, involving more people, but there will be some degree of subjectivity always in this. Consensus opinion within the specialty and outside across the specialty always helps. So it is always good to talk to the other departments and see whether these concepts are being applied there or not. It's always a good practice to involve the past learners. The best persons to be talked about this particular thing is to talk to the house surgeons or interns in your institute. They will tell what are the type of cases they are observing in this field. So these are the challenges that are there in assigning weights. Now the third point is number of items to be included. Items here means the number of marks. So how many items to be included in the assessment process? That depends upon, again, the university, the marking pattern that they do. If the domain of interest is such a large domain as per the medical curriculum, if we take a small test sample, the probability of being unhappy in the previous slide, the first or second slide, we saw that the students were complaining, it came from one particular subject, the other systems were not represented, that is more. But if you take a larger test sample, then the probability of being happy is more, because then it will cover a large area. So this is what we should keep in mind, and we should decide the number of items. So it has been mentioned in the literature that 50 to 60 items achieves a test reliability of 0.8 for a discrimination index difference of 0.03. So usually we take about 50 to 60 items. In Western literature, it says items because they usually rely heavily on MCQs. So each item is equated to 1 mark. But in our system, we have short answers and long answer questions. So the number of items will be less for us. So the best thing to remember is we can make our questions structured so the number of segments or items can be increased. So maximum we should have 100 items. Beyond that, there is no additional benefit, and minimum should be 30 in the literature it says, but 50 to 60 items should gives a test reliability of 0.8. Now that we also should need to understand and keep in mind that feasibility or time of resources should always be kept in mind, because if we have multiple items but we don't have people to conduct or administer the test, it becomes very difficult. So that is another important component to remember. Now coming back to the table that we left with, where we gave weights for our subjects like renal, respiratory and cardiovascular system, and we reached here about a total, the total weight of 15. Now if we start taking the percentage, the weightage for the specialty or the subject is calculated as I into F by T. What does that mean? So it is the weights for renal course comes as 2, the total weight is 15. So the ratio of comes to 2 by 15 or 13% if we convert it into percentage. Respiratory 4 by 15 is 27%. 9 by 15 is 60% for cardiovascular system. So the total marks that we have at our disposal should be distributed in this manner for the different subjects. Now the total marks, if we have 60, for example, if I take this in this hypothetical example, where we're talking about the total assessment processes of 60 marks, then the 8 marks will come from renal, 16 marks will come from respiratory system, and 36 marks will come from cardiovascular system. So, and how did we get this? This came from the multiplication of I and F. I stands for impact, F stands for frequency. And it was this scales or this scores are given by experts, and it was built up in a consensus process, and then we get the marks for it. So having got 60, what we are going to do now is we talk about the distribution of marks, where I was talking about the role of universities or dean's office there. So the theory paper marks, suppose we tell it is 42, and practical examination is for 18 marks. In practical, we look at the procedural skills and affective domain, and in theory, it is the cognitive component. So 42 marks and 18 marks. Now, this is how the table of specification looks. So we have sorted out certain things. We are talking about, let's start again from the beginning. So the first thing, because I told this is a grid or a table, the table contains the content sections like renal, respiratory and cardiovascular system. Then there is a total mark distribution, and we have got these domains like cognitive domain is represented here in the first 4 columns, cognitive domain under the MCQ and SAQs, and affective and procedural skills domain is reflected in the OSCE component. Under the MCQ, again, if we have to decide that what percentage should be lower order thinking or knows only the recall level, we should also make we can also factor that in. So knows how. So there will be some difference. So if we want medical school people to learn 1/3 to be knows and 2/3 to be knows how, so more weightage is given to knows how component, because they will be dealing with real life scenario. You can decide 50-50, or you can give more percentage to knows or knows how. So 60 for knows also is possible. So that is again another round of discussion with the experts, and you can decide how strict your threshold you want to be. Because you remember, if it is more towards this domain, knows how or higher order thinking skill, it takes a lot of time for question paper setting, and our teaching learning should also be aligned like that. We should also give them the real life scenario for teaching in our classes or sessions. So this is how the table looks. So start decoding the table. And now let me put the numbers there. It's like a Sudoku game. How do you fit the numbers there? So content area, renal, respiratory and cardiovascular system, we have got 8, 16 and 36 marks that we got from the weights. The domain of learning, theory we thought we'll put 42 marks, and skills we'll look at 18 marks. So that is how it is distributed. It is adding up to 60. Here it is adding up to 60. The tools of assessment, if we decide that MCQ should be 30 marks SAQ should be 12 marks, and OSCE should be 18 marks. Again, it is adding up to 60. So see, cognitive domain, which usually talks about the MCQs and SAQs, it is 30 plus 12. It adds up to 1242 here. And the skill assessment, which says shows and does 18, and 18 is here. So it matches everything, and we have distributed the marks into the 3 subjects. Now let's come back. So it is the table of specification. To understand, you have to imagine about an onion. So how do you take out? So when you peel the onion, you will get one layer by the other. So in this case, let's start from the periphery. Now the total marks that was allotted for this hypothetical example is 60, and we what did we decide? That the subjects were given 8, 16, and 36 marks. So this is how we reached 60. We also decided that the MCQ should be containing 30 marks, so short answer questions will be 12 marks, and the practical assessment will be 18 marks. So it is coming to 60 again. So from the external, all the boundaries were covered. Now, if we go to the next part, now you remember we decided that the nose component should be one third. For example, I'm just giving an example. This is again up to discussion. We can take 50%, we can take more weightage for nose, 60% can also be given. It is up to you to decide. But in this example, I have taken this nose component or lower order thinking for one third of the total marks. So from MCQ, one third, 10 mark goes for the nose component. SIQ, out of 12, one third, 4 mark goes for the nose component. And in the practical, usually it is not very easy to differentiate it, hence we have left it like that. Now the other, what is remaining is your nose howl level. So nose howl level is 2/3 marks out of 30 goes for nose howl, and 8 out of 12 goes for nose howl. So this is how the table looks like. So this is a table of specification. The only thing that is missing here is the item number of questions that you are going to ask. So we now, let's look at this cardiovascular system. It has got 36 marks. And how did we decide? The 36 marks we got from weightage. Now the 36 marks, out of that 18 are MCQs. And these are the 7 marks, 18 plus 7, 12, 25, and 11. Here you are getting odd numbers because our sample is very small. This three SAM in that, that's why it is approximation. So otherwise it should be all even. It will come down to that. So now the next is this. Now the table becomes more complicated because we have now added the number of questions, or as in the Western literature, it says items. Now MCQ, there is no confusion. One item carries 1 mark. So 10 questions will carry 10 marks. 20 questions in the nose how component will carry 20 marks. This short answer question, 1 mark in this carries one question will carry 1 mark. Knows how one question will carry 1 mark. This can be the short answer question. What we can do is we can also club and make it structure. So in 2 mark short answer question, we can have 2 components. One component will address to the nose, and the other component will address to the nose howl level. So this can be done. So when we see our example, we'll see how we have classified. So it comes 7 questions, we'll have 12 marks. This is coming 7 because our sample size is quite less, quite few. It has got 3. So that's why we are getting this odd number. Now OSCE stations, we decided 6 stations with 18 marks. So each station will carry 3 marks. But in the cardiovascular system, 3 systems will carry 11 marks. It is all because of sampling error that is happening here. So this is ultimately how the table of specification will look like. And this is not very difficult. First thing, it appears complicated, but once we start doing it, it becomes very easy. I'll show you how we have done it. So we can have, this is for the first, for one particular example, we can have for individual courses, we can have for like renal course. This was from University of Calgary, where they have done for undergraduate renal course. They have done impact, frequency, and diagnosis, investigation, and treatment. So they have made it more complicated. And what we are I'm going to show now is in the Department of PSM what we have done. Now, before going to the blueprint in Excel sheet, I'll try to tell you the background of the question examination pattern in JIPMER for community medicine. Now, there are 2 theory papers in community medicine, paper 1, paper 2. Each paper has got 2 sections, section A and section B. Section A carries 40 marks, Section B carries 40 marks, so it comes to 80 marks. So the total theory paper contains 160 marks. The practical, what is being done in JIPMER is there are exercises, carries 20 marks. There is a clinico-social case presentation. Here the students go to community, get the case, come back and present it. That is 60 marks. Sometimes it is done in the hospital also. Spotters, 20 marks. Oral examination, 20 marks. So it comes down to 120, 60 plus 20 plus 20, 120 practical. And there is an internal assessment component of 70, which is added to the summative marks later on. So even if you see for summative examination, we have got 280 marks overall. So I'll be talking about the blueprint that we have developed for theory and practical component of community medicine, which is 280 marks. So now for a moment, I'll go back to the Excel sheet. Now, can you just indicate whether you can see this Excel sheet? Okay. So, so this is how the blueprint of summative assessment for community medicine looks. We have some chapters in one side. I have marked it in different colors for easy readability. Now, if you look at this topic 1, all these portions are for paper 1. And below the pink, which is little light, it is for 2. Now, the issue is we have got theory examination, practical. I have explained the pattern here. We have short answer questions, 5 marks is 6 questions per section, and 1 long answer for each section. So it comes to 6 short answer question plus 1 long answer question for each section. And for 2 theory papers, we have 4 sections. So it comes to 24 short answer questions and 4 long answer questions. So 24 into 5 is 120 marks, which is below. And we have got here 40 marks for long answer question. Each long answer carries 10 marks. So this is about the theory component. And in the practical, we have got 20 marks for exercises. Clinico-social case presentation carries 60 marks. Spotters are 20 and oral is 20. So it is 120 marks here. So this is, and now we have to develop a table of specification for this particular. So now, as we discussed, the table of specification, the empty table of specification looks like this. We have the contents in one side. So I have taken it from all our subjects in the curriculum prescribed in JIPMER, and also looked at the MCI curriculum, what has come up. Now paper 1, paper 2 distinction was made. Then we did impact, frequency, and opportunity classification. Now I told you impact and frequency, but we have added another component of opportunity of learning in other specialty, because some of the the subjects are very core to us, like epidemiology, like national health programs, healthcare of the community. The other thing is health planning and health management. These are core to community medicine, and that's why we included this opportunity as another dimension to giving weight. Now, having done that, let me show you how did we give weight. So in this impact, frequency, and opportunity, what happened is we developed the scale. The impact and frequency, we adhere to the literature and how they classified. 1 stands for non-urgent lethal prevention potential, 2 for serious, and 3 for life-threatening. And for frequency, it was rarely seen, relatively common, very common. Very common for community medicine is anything more than 10% prevalence in the community. 1 to 10% is relatively common, and less than 1% is rarely seen. That's how we classify as per our public health issues. Now, the third one is opportunity to learn in other specialty. For example, if there is a high opportunity to learn in other specialty, we have given them less score, because that anyway that will be covered. For example, if non-communicable disease, hypertension management, anyway it will be covered in medicine. So that's why this was given high. Moderate, where we thought that okay, there will be possibility, but it will not be covered extensively, it will be moderate. And where the subject that is core, like epidemiology, like the national health programs, like health planning management, where it is not going to be covered anywhere, we have given them highest score, that is 3. So it is reverse coded. The opportunity to learn in other specialty was reverse coded. So 1 stands for high and 3 for low, which is, so if, for example, epidemiology, nobody is going to teach. Community medicine is the only department which teaches epidemiology. So what we'll do, we'll give them 3. So the score is higher. So 3 experts sat together and we gave marks, the scores for each of these. Suppose for, let me take epidemiology. So everyone gave 3, 3, 3 here. So it came to like the total of impact, frequency, and opportunity. We put it in the Excel sheet, and you just multiply that. So in the total weightage table of specification, so this 3 to, I've just taken the total weights from the 3 experts, and I have just put it here. Impact, frequency, and opportunity is coming here. Then now we have to go to the mark distribution. How do you give mark distribution? So the weightage is you add everything. So this multiplication, impact IFO multiply, you will get 21.3. 3 multiplied by 2.7 into 2.7 gives you this 21.33. Now, after having got this weight, we added this weight. So we got 315. In our previous example, we got 15. But now if you have more sample, you get a larger weight. It becomes 315. Hence, and after that, we converted into percentage. So how did we convert it into percentage? So 21.3 divided by 315, the total weight multiplied by 100 gives you 6.8%. Now this 6.8 means what? That 6.8% of marks should be coming from this particular chapter, concept of health and disease. So 6.8% of 280 marks is coming to 19 marks from that chapter. So this was, the decimals are all equated to the nearest number, whole number. So that's why you can see in the Excel, I have put some formula. So it is coming 18.9, but the total marks are 19. So I got this 19 mark. Let me repeat again. How did I get this 19? The 19 was this impact, frequency, opportunity was multiplied to get weight. These weights are added up to get the cumulative weight. The cumulative weight, this individual weight divided by the cumulative weight gave us the weightage percentage, and that percentage is multiplied to total marks. So we got the marks for each chapter. So 19 for concept of health and disease, 8 for environmental health, and like that. So we got all these things. And if you add all these marks, it will add up to 280, which is for our summative assessment, 160 for theory and 120 for practical. Now the next question is, how do we get this table of specification filled up? So after getting to sit together and decide, how do we have to get 24 questions for short answers and 4 long answer questions. So we started with long answer questions. So long answer question in the paper 1, there should be 2 long answer, because each section contains 1 long answer and 6 short answer. So if you see, the maximum weightage for this chapter is from epidemiology and from the RCH. So if you look at the RCH and epidemiology, we thought that is important to ask them this question, and they should also learn about maternal mortality and other issues. So we gave long questions in epidemiology and the RCH, the subject. So similarly, you can also think of giving concept of health and disease there, because there are 2 short answers. It can be changed. I'll tell you the modification or the instruction that is to be given to the examiners for question paper setting. So after having done that, similarly for paper 2, we also decided that it can come from epidemiology of NCDs and health planning and management. So these 4 long questions are settled. After having done that, the MCQ, the short answer questions were distributed to 2 matches. So for an example, let me take you through epidemiology chapter. The epidemiology chapter, as per weightage, we have given 24 marks. So 24 marks should come from epidemiology. Now here, the short answer question is 1, which is equal to 5 marks. The long answer question is 10, which is 1, which is 10 marks. So 5 plus 10 is 15. There is 1 component of exercise in the practical, which is adding up to 20. Now, after having added 20, there are 1 questions for spotter, like a table or a graph, and 2 marks for oral question. So it adds up to 24. So here 5 5 plus 10, 15 plus 10, 5, 20 plus 2 spotters 22 plus 2 oral 24. So this is how for each subject you have to see that it is distributed in the theory and practical examination in a manner that the total weightage is restored. There will be some difference, 1 or 2 marks here and there, but that is all right. That is okay. So it cannot be exactly the same percentage. So for example, if you look at this third point, which is environmental health, we have given 1 mark for short answer question, and clinico-social case 5 marks. So it comes to 10. So 2 marks extra. So it will be all adjusted later on. So if you see, it is okay to be 1 or 2 marks here and there, but there should not be gross discrepancy. The problem that happens, why we are getting this 1 or 2 marks here and there, is our segmentation of mark is quite high, like it's 5 marks. If it is MCQ, then we could have adjusted for everything. But as for the university or the institution, we have this examination pattern where you have 1 question carries 5 marks and 1 question carries 10 marks. So the segmentation becomes very, very difficult. You can do structured question, structured short answer question also, but structured cannot be so, like, it will take time. It will take time. You can have 2 or 3 bits in it so that the marks can be distributed. So similarly, after having done this theory examination, you will add, if you add everything, it comes to 24 questions of short answer, 4 questions of long answer. It came to 120 plus 40, 160, which is the mark for the theory. The practical and skill, similarly, for exercises, we have, and let me show you this. Yeah, for exercises, there are 4 components. It is already settled. It is from epidemiology, demography, biostatistics, and health planning. So from there, we ask sort exercises. So that was already given. Clinico-social case, we made it more structured, where we get concept of health disease gets 10 marks, like that, environment 5, and this is a distribution of 60 marks. Spotters, each spotter carries 2 marks, so 10 spotters, so 10 spotters are distributed. And finally, the viva. So viva or oral marks are actually a buffer where whatever is remaining can be adjusted and can be given the marks. So that is how you reach 20. So 120 marks for the practical. So this is one the way of. The other thing, in the previous example, we saw that we have to give some weightage for the higher order or lower order thinking. In this example, or in this blueprint, what we have done is we have given 60% weightage for lower order thinking skill, 40% for higher order. So if you look at the first question, the first chapter, which is concept of health and disease, it has got 2 short answer questions, which is equivalent to 10 marks, and 60% of that comes from recall level or understanding level, and 4 marks will come from higher order, like analysis, application, and synthesis level. So that is also is possible. So the more attributes you add to the blueprint, the more complex it becomes, and it becomes difficult to adjust and get the marks together. But it is always a very, very good exercise to start doing it for our specialty. So this is using Excel sheet. You can do it very well. You don't need to have specific software for this. It is a very nice exercise, and everyone should be trying to do this. So this is, so now I'll stop sharing the Excel sheet and I'll go back to the presentation of in the PowerPoint. I hope this is clear to you, and ultimately this is the table of specification we'll look, and we'll send to the examiner the contents and theory and cognitive practical, this theory component here, from where theory question paper setter, this will come, and give them instruction that one thing I forgot to tell you, if there are 2 short notes, which is equivalent to 10 marks, so the examiners can switch the long question for 2 short notes. So in this case, suppose this here, we have infectious disease, which has got 2 short notes. We can change it to 1 long question there, and the 2 short notes can be asked from this chapter, which is your health planning. So it is up to the examiner, that indication will be given, so that it is easy for them to choose from how to do it. So let me stop sharing the screen and I'll go back to the presentation mode. So this is our experience of developing blueprint in community medicine. Very, very rewarding exercise. Please do it in your specialty. And so this, we have just looked at the Excel sheet. There are other blueprints available for pathology and other thing in the literature. They have used a different criteria of must know, desirable, nice to know. So there are different ways of doing it. IF can be done, IFO can be done, some modification can be done for that. Now the last component. So as of now, what we have done is in the first section, we discussed the need of a blueprint and what is a blueprint, how it helps. The second component, second section, we saw how do you develop a blueprint and hypothetical example and also in a real life scenario. And in the third, we are looking at some challenges of developing a blueprint. Now, what are the challenges? The first thing questions are usually asked, should it be shared with the learners? Yes, we should share with the learners because ultimately it is for their benefit. Some people say if we share blueprint with them, then they can predict the question and they can write. But the blueprint, if it is made in such a way, we are covering the must know areas and important topics there. It is good that they learn those topics and master that particular domain. So it should be shared. It should be shared with the question paper setters. It could be shared with the to the learners, and also it should be shared with the teachers who are handling the teaching learning methods. How often we should revise the blueprint? That is the common question people usually ask. So see, the blueprint, ideally in literature, they say it should be changed every 1 to 2 years, which is very difficult. We revise it every 5 years because we consider that the disease profile in the community doesn't change before 5 years. So that is how we plan it. There is no right or wrong answer. You can do it every 2 years if you have resources to do it. If you can do that, that is fine. But 5 years, we should revisit the blueprint. Is it a method to improve performance? So having a blueprint, does it increase student performance? I looked at literature very carefully, but I could not come up with any literatures documenting this. Probably this is another way of conducting educational research. One paper I got in 2005 where they said that the performance level was equal. It was a small study done in 35 students in the UK. So that was the conclusion. The conclusion was it didn't improve the performance, but they have given a caveat saying that it was a very small study and it was what we should do is we should try this and try to document whether it improves performance. But it's a very, very rewarding exercise. It makes things very, very clear to a lot of people, and ultimately the students benefit out of it. Sometimes there is a question that whether MCQ be a part of summative assessment. There is no right and wrong answer. Again, for this, it depends upon your university. But addition of MCQ to summative assessment increases the scope. You can cover many things in MCQ, but the formation of MCQ is a problem. What happens is MCQs are asked, all of these questions are true except. So we usually limit ourselves to the lower order thinking or recall level, which is a very, very, which is underutilization of the potential of MCQ to my mind, because MCQ is a very nice tool to assess a variety of domains. We can do real life scenario, we can talk about, we can give higher order thinking skill, but it takes training, it takes practice, it takes validation, and there are other issues related to it. I think to sum up, these are the topics that we discussed. Explain the need of having a blueprint, the process of developing blueprint. There are some challenges of developing a blueprint, but ultimately we should give a thumbs up for our developing a blueprint on our specialty. If you do it, it's a very rewarding exercise, and I have enjoyed developing blueprint for Department of Community Medicine, and it's really nice and satisfying experience. So finally, if we have a blueprint, the students will be happy. They were very sad at the starting point, beginning of our session, but I hope with this, if you as teacher or facilitator develop blueprints and share with your learners. They will be happy and they'll look forward to your session. So I do acknowledge that the role of Department of Medical Education in my journey in medical education. PSG Femur Regional Institute, where I have done my fellowship, and I'm also faculty there. Department of PSM from Learning, and all my teachers who have given me this opportunity, and all my colleagues in the Department of Medical Education and TTC. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And these are some suggested readings that will be shared with you. And we'll be happy to take some questions and if there are some clarification. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, that was Sudhanshu, kind of a very lucid presentation. We'll just quickly go through what you spoke about, and then we will take the questions. You basically initially introduced all the challenges that question paper center would face. You described the various constraints that are there, the mismatch between the objectives and the assessment, what to start in the class, what is to be assessed. You then described also briefly about the formative and summative assessment and how Miller's pyramid is generally used as a framework for making the question paper. You then went on to develop a blueprint, the qualities of a blueprint, the attributes of a blueprint.
That's it.
Okay, fine. All right, and finally, you shared your experience of blueprint development. So let's take the questions now. If you're ready, we will go ahead. Initially, there are these very nice and useful things. Any bias in preparing questions? That's what has come up from Dr. Siddiqui, everyone. What are the biases that you have in preparing a question?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. It is, so biases are there. We are inherently biased people. So that means, what do I mean by that statement is, when you are trying to frame questions, we always think that if I have taught that particular subject, then I should be asking more questions from that. That is what biases come in. So, but once you have a blueprint, the biases is, as I talked about, the validity threats. So underrepresentation and construct irrelevance variance, where we are asking questions which are not related and which is not taught, which are faulty questions. So these are the biases usually are there in the question paper setting, and not looking at the important topics or the weightage gives you that particular those are the biases to my mind for that.
There was one. Do you share the blueprint with your students, Dr. Rajni? Generally, you said
yes. Yes, it is.
Okay. Dr. Vineet Kumar Pathak says, we never teach a subject book page to page. So if uncertainty is not there, then have you got the question right on the top, the beginning part? Dr. Vineet Kumar Pathak. Okay, I'll read it out.
Yes,
we
please.
never teach a subject book page to page. So if uncertainty is not there, how can we make sure the students are studying by themselves? Can HOTS be included in medical UG exam? I had other thinking.
Yeah, the question paper setting. See, it depends upon what do you want to ask, so, and what do you want to test. See, when an MBBS student, they pass out from an institution, what is the ultimate, if you go back to the IMG, the Indian Medical Graduate Concept, so they have to deal with the real life scenarios. So rather than asking questions like enumerate the causes or list the causes for these conditions, it is better to give a scenario so that they relate it to in the field, that a 35-year-old male person coming with this complaints, what are the differential diagnoses you can think of, and how do you manage or how do you proceed for investigation. So these are all real life scenario. This is for example, there can be many more. So the HOTS or the higher order thinking should be a component of our assessment process. But as I told in the presentation, please remember, unless we have given them the opportunity to learn in that way, it will be a futile exercise. So when we are teaching them, we are talking to them, these people, our students, we should also generate such type of interest amongst themselves, and we should link with the real life scenario. In that case, we will be good to ask this question in the examination pattern.
Any books that we can refer to learn on the subject any other book or references?
Yeah, I have
You
put
have
it in
given that.
this my last slide. That will be. I'll request Dr. Jayaprakash to share that so that you will get to them.
Practical aspect, usually the question paper setting goes to one faculty on a roster basis. In such conditions, how do we calculate the blueprint and impact? And the calculator is only one person is setting papers for that year.
Yeah, so if the blueprinting is properly done, then the person will follow that blueprint. So that is the way you have to get. So impact is not for the questions. Impact are for the subjects that you are trying to ask in the question paper. So even if it is one person, there will be, the blueprint is properly framed. Then this chapter will contribute 15 marks, too short notes. So then in that case, it will be, I don't think that should be an issue in that. I hope I answered your question.
Also says that the impact will change on a year-to-year basis. Like in today's scenario, we are focusing more on communicable disease compared to non-communicable.
Yeah, so that's why how often we should have a blueprint. That's the question that you are trying to ask, I guess. So as I also mentioned in the last slide, the challenges. If you have resources or if you have time, because it's a very intensive process, what we should do is we should relook at our blueprint every 2 to 3 years. The literature says 1 to 2 years also, but it's not possible. It's not practical. So we follow a pattern of 5 years. Now I understand because of COVID scenario, a lot of focus on infectious disease. So, but once we have this infectious disease concept, what we need to do is we have to train our students in that also. Then we can ask this question. So this is what my point is. So it is 1 to 5 years, depending upon how you can do it. So that's all from my side. We do it 5 years, every 5 years, because the disease dynamics, they don't change much. And you have a component of recent advances in your chapter, in the list of topics, recent advances. So if there is something new coming up there, like disaster management, if a flood, how do you manage there, or a pandemic like what we are dealing with now, you can put questions from there, and we can give weights there.
Okay, Vinod Babu has said MCI CBME 2019 document mentions to give 1 5-mark question based on ATCOM module.
Yeah.
Kindly clarify how to take it forward, because attitude is usually seen in clinics or practicals. Yeah. How to bring it in the theory class.
So for us in community medicine, we have a special subject. I am actually for community medicine, there is a special subject called health education and health promotion. So all this ATCOM module, communication skill principles are also covered there. So we are not at loss, but I understand your problem, because it will be very difficult to. So theory part can be asked in the principles of effective communication can be asked, or professionalism or ethics can be asked in the theory. But as you rightly said, as part of you can have an OSCE station for looking at this process of communication. So that is also possible. So you have to tweak your practical, having more more component. If like in our clinico-social case, we also look at the professionalism, ethics, the way they examine the patients and the tech history, the way how they behave in that scenario. So that component is also covered in the practical side.
Shivshakti also asks for, can you provide us supplements for references? You will do that.
Yeah.
Especially formulas for calculation.
Right.
Okay. In CBME, the marks for internal assessment and summative assessment are often fixed. So internal assessment will not be added to the summative. So that's
yeah. So for why I said separately for JIPMER is we don't come under MCI. So we have a separate examination board, which controller of examination, they sit together under the standing academic committee and they decide. We have 280 marks for practical, the summative assessment, and 70 marks for internal assessment. That is added up and comes into the final paper. So we have 350 marks. Out of that, 70 is internal assessment, but many institutions follow different pattern.
There's a question from Dr. Varun Gaiki. I joined late, but how practical is it to use a blueprint in oral Viva Voce setting?
Yeah, Viva Voce, actually oral setting, what happens is, it's Actually, oral is a separate topic altogether to discuss. And Dr. Basu, who else is the best person to handle that session? It is, we can make it structured, but what we do in our setup is we divide the sections into different 4 components, because we have 4 examiners, and each subject is not repeated at one place. But there will be some challenges, because there people will be talking and asking different questions as they feel like. So it cannot be always moderated to that way, but we give them a structure that your limit is this much, you should not go beyond, your scope is this much. So that is there. Beyond that, it is up to the examiners to take it forward.
Similar lines, can we form a blueprint for practicals, OSCE and OSCE?
Yes. Because the blueprint that I showed has got 2 components in summative, both theory and for practical, where I showed it for exercises, for for the clinico-social case, for spotters. That can be done. That is done.
Can you share your email ID in case we need to clarify our doubts?
Yes, it is there in the first slide. But anyway, I'll write it there.
We will be sharing. Someone wants a reference slide again, where we will be sharing the site, so you will get it. Someone has said highly cumbersome, but nicely covered. It's a complex topic.
Yeah, I have been handling this topic for last almost 4 or 5 years in our national health professional NTTC course, and I usually get this feedback. It is lot of numbers are there, but you have to, when you are dealing with marks, you have to deal with numbers. What else to do?
Yeah, but Shaha says medical education department can take initiative to ask all departments to prepare blueprint. We have shared it.
Yeah.
We have shared it.
We have already shared it, and we'll work together, try to do it for any help that is required. We are always there to support and help.
How many minimal faculties should be involved in making a blueprint? Are there any specific numbers?
There is no specific guideline in that, sir, but more the merrier. What happens is, if you have more people starting from young to experienced teachers, what happens is you get more ideas. So, and you have a national guideline or document like NCI to be there to refer. So, the more the merrier. So you can take it, and you should also try to get some experts from other specialty. So they will also tell you how important it is for you to focus on this particular topic. What are the issues that they deal with? So there is no such guideline. There is no, you can have start from 4 to 3 to 10, 3 to 20, depending upon how much time you have.
Not sure what it means. Should hands-on procedures be included in preparing blueprints for undergraduate students?
So what we discussed here is for summative assessment. For formative assessment also blueprint is possible. So where we say that focus should be given on this, and we will provide feedback for that particular thing. But hands-on procedures, we have not done it. I am not sure about that particular question.
I feel every department should have their own blueprint in view of regional imbalances in these disease presentations. Definitely.
Yes, that's a very, very, very important and valid point. Whatever the disease burden in Tamil Nadu may not be same in Haryana or Punjab, or maybe not in Bengal, Odisha, and in Gujarat. But we must also realize that a person who gets an MBBS degree is not going to practice in this particular region. So a national overall national framework helps, but regional importance should also be given. So we have to keep that in mind. But that's a very, very valid point.
Yeah, the same point. Devopriyo has asked that considering the curricular content of most medical colleges under various bodies are more or less the same, and the blueprinting is done by I/F into O, can we have a common blueprint pan India?
No. No. Ideally, if you look at the disease burden pattern and try to look at what happens is the communicable disease, non-communicable. If you look at down south, non-communicable disease is right. We are in epidemiological transition. We have reached a different level. But in UP, Bihar, and in Jharkhand, that area, communicable disease and maternal mortality is still very, very high. So we have to account for regional imbalances, and we have to do it in our institutional level. That is the best thing that we could do.
Can blueprint be prepared for each level of exams, terminal exam, preliminary, or the entire portion and only one blueprint with respect to university exams?
You can do that formative assessment. You can have a separate blueprint, but usually it is done for summative one because it becomes formative. You can, like I showed you the Renal course in University of Calgary where they have done it for Renal course. You can do it for formative. It's up to you, but the principles remains the same.
Okay, then there are two questions that how do we calculate impact and frequency for certain topics like general pathology, which deals with basic concepts? Someone has asked for in histology, anatomy, general anatomy. How do we prepare in impact and frequency?
Yeah, so why did we include that opportunity is that we face the same problem. So impact and frequency can be one way, but you should also give weightage to your core areas. So that's why when you can say in pathology, this is my core area, this is where it should be given importance. So you can have another like opportunity to learn what we did. You can have core pathology, CP, you can give weightage to that. And so the principle is the same. So what you are trying to do is you want them to learn some core pathology, which is the basis of all, medicine, basis of medicine of diseases and other things. So you can give another, you can add another attribute there and do it. It's possible.
Dr. Priya also says that from where do we calculate impact and frequency for each topic? How do we? I think
so it's a subject wise. Suppose each topic wise it becomes sometimes difficult. So there will be some variation. Suppose I gave you an example of cardiovascular disease, renal disease, and respiratory, the initial hypothetical example. If you look at the burden, disease burden, the common disease burden that comes is ischemic heart disease, hypertension, and that those are the major killers, and they contribute to highest DALYs, the disability adjusted life year. So, and if you look at respiratory, it is COPD and other things. Renal, it is diabetic nephropathy and other chronic conditions. So based on, there will be, you have to see and discuss amongst yourself that which one is more important. So that's why a national guideline always helps. You have to keep the national guideline, look at your the competency levels in the framework, and then from there you take it up. So that's how we do it. There will be some variation, but it's okay. But we can start from there.
Should we take feedback from the students after the exams about blueprinting?
Very, very important. We must. Actually, not should, we must. We must talk to them. And the best group of, because they will be again under the, there is a difference of power between when teachers talk to students about the examination. So the best feedback that we can get is from interns when they have already crossed that last hurdle. They will tell you that what is important for them, what they felt about the subject. There can be sometimes it is quite disheartening to listen to them. The feedback is not very encouraging, but it is good to listen to them and modify our teaching learning process after getting that feedback.
I think final one, there is blueprinting for postgraduate courses.
Yeah. So what I said showed here is the blueprinting for the undergraduate. So we are in the process of making blueprinting for the postgraduate. Probably the next time we'll also do that. The principle is the same. You have this IFO or some other matrix you have to take. But here in the assessment component where we said that the higher order thinking skills should be more because postgraduates are expected to do something extra than the undergraduate. So the weightage for the higher order thinking skills there should be around 75%, not 40% or 30%. So that is how it will change. But the principles will be quite similar.
I think that's about it.
How practically the paper setters external stick to blueprint in framing questions.
Okay.
So this is Dr. Santosh Swai who has asked this question. How practically, if you have a blueprint, whether they follow it or not. But when we set question papers, we send it to them. So outside people, the question paper setter, they send you the question. There is also still, there is a chance of moderation. No? They call the HOD or the course coordinator or in charge of that person to come and moderate the question paper. So during that time, you have some flexibility to see that whether it is aligned to the blueprint or not. So that is the time where you can modify certain things, and that can be done.
So if there are no further questions, we'll close. Sudhanshu, just a little bit, your take-home message.
Please. Okay.
Okay,
You want to say? Yes, sir. Sure.
basically.
Hmm.
Basically, when we align the curricular elements to achieve the stated goals, we all as teachers should not hesitate to make use of it for the blueprinting in our day-to-day life, right? It has a lot of significance. So,
Yes.
could you just sum up in a line or two as to what you would like us to
So
know about it or do for blueprinting?
So the first thing is you should have the will to do it. You create a group in the department, give the job to 4 or 5 people who are looking after the undergraduate curriculum. And from there, what we can do is once you create that group, give them that freedom to develop it first. Don't interfere in the beginning. So after they have developed it, what is the best thing is to let them present to the whole department and get feedback from others. So the will starts from there. So once you have that particular thing, so create a small group, take it to the larger forum, get it validated, and then convince your dean. It's a very rewarding experience, I'll tell you, because the students are benefited out of it. So that's my take-home message. Please start small, but think big.
Thank you, Sudhanshu. I think we'll close the session. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.